This webinar is Stop Your Divorce 2.0, specifically for men. Now, how would you like to stop your wife's plan to divorce and instead restore the empowering relationship that brought you two together years ago? First, let's look at who this program is for. You're successful in other areas of your life, but your marriage is now somehow threatened. Your wife has decided that she does want that divorce. You definitely don't want that to happen. And in fact, you would do anything in your power to again have that relationship that brought you two together years ago. In the next 40 to 45 minutes, you're going to learn about the step-by-step strategy to stop arguments in their tracks and reduce the distance between you and your wife without counseling or compromise. You'll discover why the current methods of counseling are dead wrong and actually drive your wife to divorce. In spite of your wife's current perspective, you two are not incompatible. You will see how the system you are about to learn has helped many men within 6 to 8 weeks stop their wife from moving forward with her plan for divorce. You will have a clear picture as to what's really going on between you and your wife, and you'll see the brain research which has led to a rapid and remarkably effective science-based approach to derail your wife's divorce plan. My promise to you, without sacrificing what you want or becoming something you're not, I'll show you the step-by-step plan that puts you in the best position to slow and even stop your wife's plan to divorce. And even if she has one foot out the door, we're going to make this happen. This is not a sales presentation. There's nothing for sale here. I've specifically designed this so that you can walk away with tangible information that puts you in the best position to slow and stop your wife's plan for divorce. My private clients have paid me thousands of dollars for the information I'm giving you in this seminar. I only wish that someone had been there in my hour of need to show me this information. Why am I doing this? Well, it's because I'm sick and tired of seeing so many men who needlessly give up their marriage and family. It's a real preventable tragedy. Far too many men have been referred to me because they were told you and your wife are totally incompatible. You might ask, if my wife and I are incompatible, how do you explain the fantastic relationship we had just a few years ago? The reality is, incompatible is a lie. Incompatible is a self-serving lie, an excuse therapists tell themselves and you because they don't know how to restore your relationship to what it was a few years ago. The success of my private clients didn't happen because they were lucky. They were absolutely committed to follow a precision-targeted, highly disciplined strategy scientifically designed to derail their wife's plan to divorce. This note sent to me by a former client describes the system well. What's really unbelievable, absolutely magic, is that your coaching me has changed my wife back to the incredible woman that I married. Thanks again, and may God bless you. That's the plan I'm about to show you. So what's my suggestion for this webinar? Unless you were in the audience at one of my former presentations, this information is something you have never seen before. So I strongly recommend you clear your mind, turn off all distractions, including those beeps, rings, dings on your cell phone, and throw your cell phone to the side if it's not off already. This is not a recap of old information. Hold on to your seatbelt. It's a lot of new information to give you in a very limited period of time. Information that might literally knock your socks off. Take good notes. This is going to be one of the most powerful 45 minutes you've ever spent to save your marriage and your family. What's also exciting is that this new brain research is actually going to show you and explain why current marriage counseling causes divorce, which is a real shame. I've been providing relationship strategies to professionals and business leaders for a really long time, and I've never been able to deliver such absolutely consistent and remarkable results before these MRI and EEG research discoveries were done. Now, does this sound like you? Let me know. Unable to sleep due to that stare at the ceiling, wondering how in the world did our relationship go from hot and heavy to angry, cold, and distant? Do you feel that every day the two of you are drifting further and further apart? And do you sometimes drive home slowly so you don't have to experience the distance, tension, and hostility? Do you wake up in the morning 2 feet away from your wife, but you feel like you're 2 miles away? Do you secretly hope that she will come to her senses and all of a sudden change her mind? While at work, do you recognize that your minds drift and you lose your focus? Do you absolutely feel powerless? Do you turn things around very skeptical that anything could possibly help, and that your marriage is beyond repair and headed for divorce? If that sounds like you, then I have good news. None of that is the real problem. Honestly, those are just symptoms. Do you want to know the real problem? You're locked in an adversarial cycle, and in just a few minutes, I'm going to show you how to stop just that. As you disable those adversarial cycles, within days, you'll be able to reduce the tension and distance between you and your wife. Calm will prevail throughout the house. You will have the method to consistently and calmly stop arguments in their tracks without your compromising what and who you are. You'll be in the best position to stop your wife's plan to divorce and instead, within weeks, regain the empowering relationship that brought you two together years ago. Despite the availability of more and more information found all over the web, the divorce rate is at almost 50%, and it's been that way for more than half a century. And recent studies now show that many people stick it out in relationships that are a far cry from what they want. Either they coexist, leading nearly separate lives, or they get used to the new normal of arguments and fights. But for how long will they really stick it out? Gray divorce is on the rise. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, over the past 25 years, if you find yourself between 50 and 64 years old, you might be surprised to know that divorce rates have doubled for your age category. 65 and older, divorce rates have tripled. A significant share of gray divorces occur among couples who have been married for over 25 years, and they don't really know what the problem is. The repair seems impossible. The way we have thought about the problem is the problem. How we have thought about the problem has determined how we have attempted to fix it. And all of the current methods used to fix the problem are failing miserably. The success rates of counseling is at 30%. You have better odds at just flipping a coin. A new way of thinking about the problem is obviously necessary. Before we go further, let me take 30 seconds to introduce myself. I'm Dr. Carlsberg. My specialty is relationship strategies. I'm a former officer in the U.S. Marines and FAA flight instructor. But why am I telling you this? Just to reassure you that there is nothing that you're going to hear that's quote-unquote touchy-feely. These are precision-targeted strategies. I developed the system How to Rewire Your Wife's Brain and received the Georgetown University's Award for Excellence in Teaching. My method has been published in professional journals, and I've taught this to audiences throughout the United States. After my tour with the Marine Corps, I married for the first time. It didn't go too well. Many months of counseling, divorce, followed by many years of pain. The children suffered. They really suffered. Regardless of how long ago that happened, each time I relate this story, I experience the pain as though it happened just yesterday. I swore that I would create a method that men could use to prevent divorce so that they and their children don't have to experience the years and years of pain as I did. How a neural pathway functions. Let's look specifically at the brain. The brain has a cluster of nerve cells which is called the thinking brain and another cluster which is called the action brain. It's the action brain that produces what we say and do. These two clusters plus the cluster of nerve cells connecting the two are called the neural pathway. Example, thinking I'm thirsty, and the action you take, you get a glass of water. Simple enough, right? Those thoughts lead to feelings. Those feelings lead to actions. I call that the neural pathway. The thought you believe triggers your action brain. You believe there's a safety hazard created by a nearby car being driven erratically, so you drive to a safer lane. The connection between thoughts and actions happens so fast that we seldom see the thoughts and actions as separate. The separation between the two becomes more apparent on the golf course. To eliminate my slice thought, I must grasp the club more firmly with my left hand. Action. If I want the neural pathway to become an automatic habit, I have to practice it repeatedly. Alternatives can develop within the thinking brain. As you know, the thinking brain can vacillate, be indecisive, of two minds. Using chess as an example, my thinking brain thinks my opponent is trying to capture my queen. The alternative is my thinking brain thinks my opponent is trying to put me in check. Depending upon which of these two different thoughts I choose to believe, there is a single thought that will trigger my action brain. Using our neural pathway example, the thinking brain is that thoughts capture my queen or alternatively put me in check, those feelings, and the action that I take will depend on which one I choose to believe. It triggers my action brain. You and your wife formerly took so much pleasure in pleasing one another. Have you ever wondered what is it that causes you to now have trouble even getting along? Ally to adversary. Formerly, she saw you as her friend, perhaps her best friend, her ally. Today, she often sees you as the antagonist, her adversary, a non-friendly person. These are some of the ways that happens. First, recognize that your success puts many demands on you. Sometimes those demands, time constraints, and the inevitable stresses of a busy life causes frustrations and disappointments. At times, it's arguments and disagreements that never get resolved. Sometimes it's the long-lasting result of mistakes and oversights. Yet other times, disagreements cause you to compromise. Compromise most often results in dissatisfaction and even resentment. At times, you have failed to recognize her efforts and express appreciation. As a result, she has felt underappreciated and underacknowledged, that you've taken her for granted. Sometimes it's the loud or angry or silent, sullen way in which frustration and disappointment are expressed. Those negative interactions, when repeated or recalled over and over, actually creates an alternative, a new, unflattering, negative mental picture, her thoughts of how she sees you. Regardless of the cause, your wife now periodically, alternatively, thinks of you as insensitive, thoughtless, or worse, not caring. How her brain was formerly wired. She saw you as her best friend, her strongest ally. She never wanted to be without you. Her mental picture of you as her best friend was her trigger for her positive neural pathway. She was affectionate, warm, caring, attentive, but now her brain is wired differently. She sees you as the adversary, someone who is non-friendly. Seldom does she want to be with you. Her mental picture of that non-friendly adversary has created a new negative neural pathway. She's cold, distant, angry, critical. Let's go over the 4 steps. What you're about to learn is an integrated system. That means each step depends on the preceding step. As we go along, I'll explain that interdependence. Now, how did I discover these 4 steps? I spent many years puzzled, in fact, astonished by the fact that marriage counseling, for some unknown reason, actually causes divorce. What was going on in these sessions that prompted couples to divorce? It turns out that the real success rate of marriage counseling, when examined 6 months after therapy, is only 30%. It was clear that a new way of thinking about the problem itself was necessary. Recent brain research has revealed how the brain gets wired. And that research information is the quickest way for you to get into a position to slow and stop your wife's plan for divorce. If we take a look at the tests themselves, looking at the EEG, these electrodes are placed against the scalp and monitor and map those neural pathways within the brain that I was talking about. The primary motor cortex just behind the thinking brain is what I call the action brain. If you put your hand on your forehead, that's the ingenious thinking brain. Neuroscientists have identified what part of the action brain controls what part of the body. Notice the large amount of the action brain dedicated to controlled speaking, facial expressions, and vocal cords. Taking a look at our map again for the neural pathway, how she sees and thinks about you, whether it's friend or alternatively as a non-friend or adversary, will determine what those actions are and will determine what she says and does. Repetitions of these neural pathways creates a habit, just like on the golf course. The growth of these neural pathways into habits can be measured by MRI. Let's take a look at these MRI scans. You can see that pathway growing and growing. The brain's amazing ability to change is very clearly seen here. With repetitive episodes come new habits. The brain research has been done. The method to rewire the brain is now known. The only thing needed was to put this into action, to put it into a format that was best suited for you to be able to rewire your wife's brain. And that's what we're about to learn together. If you forget everything that I say, the one thing that I want you to remember is that when you disable the adversarial cycle, you alter how your wife sees you. And that puts you in the best position to slow and derail your wife's plan for divorce. Step 1, lower your wife's stress level. Your wife must repeatedly see that you are exhibiting no manipulation, no threats or coercion, no promises to alter behavior or deals, no judgmental comments, no pleading or convincing, no advice she already knows, no compromise. This is absolutely essential. Doing this will allow you to reduce her stress level, her defenses, and, for a moment, her momentum. This diagram from the Harvard Business Review shows the relationship between stress and decision making. Up to that point with the arrow, there is no deterioration in decision making. Stress beyond that point rapidly causes a profound deterioration of your wife's decision making ability. Stress will no doubt cause your wife to make poor decisions. It's important to actively discourage her from rushing decisions. When stressed, we all make bad decisions. Your wife is no exception. Sources of her stress could be your wife has made the decision to end the marriage, and that is causing her a bunch of stress. Sticking with her decision, she's aware that she will cause severe pain and disrupt the lives of those whom she cares about most, and this period of time is painful for her. She wants to get past it as quickly as possible. We all would. That urgency increases her stress. Depending upon your wife's mindset and her momentum, or that feeling like she's got to move forward with that divorce as quickly as possible, you must act as calmly, confidently, and quickly as possible. You must be in that calm but not indifferent mood and say something like, although I definitely hope that you will change your mind, it is not my decision to make. Take that stress off of her. Only you, my wife, can make that decision. Pressure from you will only increase her resolve to leave the marriage. She's going to feel like you are trying to pressure her into something that she really does not want to do. She's not thinking clearly. No one is when they're stressed. So do not allow your determination to save the marriage produce the opposite result. Now, what's the purpose of this step? The purpose is to slow that momentum, to give her more time to calmly reconsider that far-reaching, permanent damage that a divorce may cause. The crucial step demonstrates that you are not trying to coerce her. This is vital, that you are not trying to convince her to change her mind. This decision is totally hers. Once she perceives that you don't pose a threat to her plan, you're not trying to stop her, she can reduce her defenses just a little bit, her stress level, that need to rush. She can take her time now that she knows you're not a threat. Yes, you can change her mind. You can. However, if you increase her stress, you'll increase the chances that she will make a bad decision quickly. As she reduces the urgency to get that divorce as quickly as possible and some of her defenses, it also lowers the risk that you will fall victim to a self-fulfilling prophecy. Now let me explain that last point. As she sees you as having eliminated her need to fight you, you will have eliminated her need to put those defensive shields up. That will lower the tension level between you and thereby reduce the intensity of your hopelessness. It's your perception of hopelessness that produces the self-fulfilling prophecy. More about that in the next section. Step 2, beware of the self-fulfilling prophecy. Your prediction can destroy your marriage. So what is this self-fulfilling prophecy? Well, first you make an unspoken prediction. Then out of your own awareness, you take action that causes your prediction to come true. And you may be saying to yourself, come on, Doc, let's get real. That's just some fairy tale. The self-fulfilling prophecy has been scientifically proven. Scientifically proven means that if a research scientist in Boston does an experiment, a research scientist in San Francisco doing the same experiment will get the same results. The self-fulfilling prophecy hasn't just been around for a few years, it's been around for a long time. Macroeconomics of the self-fulfilling prophecy in 1999. Harvard Business Reviews had books on it. We've also got that self-fulfilling prophecy from 2014. It is not some recent fantasy. Again, the self-fulfilling prophecy, you make that unspoken prediction and then out of your own awareness, you take action and those predictions end up coming true. Let me give you an example. You may have gotten to the point after months of tension and arguments that all you have to do is see your wife or hear her coming in the door and you immediately predict something unpleasant is about to happen. So your body automatically goes and gets tense and you're almost combat ready. You become withdrawn, guarded, defensive, evasive. When your wife perceives you as standoffish, withdrawn, evasive, what will she do? She's going to be warm and endearing and positive, a great picture of you? Come on, let's be serious. That's not going to happen. Now, if we take a look at the self-fulfilling prophecy in this layout here, you can see those predictions, the trouble approaching. You feel that concern and then you take action. We don't know if those thoughts and feelings in the bubbles there, are those really happening? I don't know. But what we can see are those actions. You being a little bit standoffish, withdrawn, defensive, guarded. In response, your wife might think, what is he hiding? I'm not his enemy here. And then she starts to feel angry. And those feelings of anger lead to actions that confirm your predictions. And then we're back at your prediction itself. And those thoughts, you just created your own prophecy. Let's look at the other sources of your predictions. Your skepticism about your marriage can cause a prediction. Perhaps you feel like this is hopeless. She cannot change. A failed attempt to fix your marriage can also cause a problem. For example, you go to counseling and you find out that it fails. You feel to yourself, you know what, this is hopeless. We're just totally incompatible. Such a prediction is the kiss of death, and the self-fulfilling prophecy will take over and doom your marriage. Now, what's the reason for this step? You're able to direct your full attention and effort to the next step of controlling the interactional cycle. And being able to consistently control the interactional cycle will require your focused attention, self-discipline, and your maximum controlled effort. You cannot consistently deliver your best effort if, in the back of your mind, you're saying to yourself, this is never going to work, it's hopeless. Step number 3, control the interactional cycle. When you control the interactional cycle, you determine the fate of every conversation and thereby the fate of your relationship. You may recall what we went over earlier. Her brain was formally wired to say, I saw you as my best friend, my strongest ally. I never wanted to be without you. Her mental picture of you as her best friend would trigger her positive neural pathway. And how her brain is now, it's changed. It's no longer seeing you as the friend. You're now the adversary. Seldom does she want to be with you, and her mental picture of you is now the negative neural pathway. She's cold, distant, angry, critical. Now, how do these two originate? Both the former wiring and current wiring developed as a result of your former and current interactions. Recently, less friendly interactions have developed a new, less flattering alternative, and the image she has of you no longer is a positive one. She thinks and sees you in that negative, less flattering way. It's not the other way around. Before the EEG and MRI research, many believed that something else was to blame, but that's just not so. It's not the result of some childhood experience or from hormonal imbalance or because you don't speak her love language or because it's stress from her job or because you're from different planets. Do you want proof? All the countless counseling techniques based on these explanations are failing miserably. By controlling the cycles, you can rewire her brain. You will be able to prove this to yourself. Within 10 to 14 days of your executing this 4-step system, you will be able to observe the tension and hostility and the anger, the chilly distance between the two of you will be periodically less. When you see this happening, you will gain increasing confidence that you are on the right track. Let's take a deeper look at the interactional cycle using this method. Let's take an action. For example, just a smile, something as simple as a smile. That will lead to a new thought in your wife, and then that feeling will change. Maybe, you know what, maybe it's not as bad as I once thought, and then another action. Maybe she smiles back. Something as simple as that is already a change that you're seeing. Now for the adversarial cycle. All adversarial cycles are a result of the mental picture your wife has of you. That mental picture that you have of your wife, and this is the primary result of her picture of you. For example, we take criticism, frown, disappointment. That leads to new thoughts from you, which lead to new feelings, and then you have a counterattack, a contradict, and then you feel like you need to withdraw. So who's at fault here? No one's at fault. You're taking actions based on thoughts that you get from the other person's actions. It's a cycle. It's a circle. You need to be able to break this. Let's take an example that I have seen countless times. Your wife says, you know what, clearly I'm not that important to you. And then you come back and you say, you know what, that's not even close to true. You are absolutely wrong. I guarantee you, if this starts to happen, it's a guaranteed method to produce that adversarial cycle. If you get into this adversarial cycle and you start getting into the you're right, you're wrong, look at these obvious things I've done for you or said to you in the past, how can you say this? If that starts to become your reality, I 100% guarantee that this will lead to an even further adversarial cycle. When you point out her misrepresentation, all she hears is, hey dummy, what's wrong with you? When you contradict her, she knows you're lying. That's because she has hard evidence to the fact that you are absolutely wrong. Just ask her. She'll tell you that those are the facts, and you can't deny it. I can even give you an example of part of the problem. All I have to do is fill in 2 blanks. Do you remember last week or month or whatever it is when you did or didn't do whatever it is? There's a hard fact. When you accuse her of a misperception or contradict her, do you really think that will lower her stress level? You often need to go against your natural instincts for this, and that requires an enormous dose of self-discipline. Your attempt to derail your wife's divorce plan will fail if you persist at acting knee-jerk impulsively, instinctively clarifying her misperceptions and contradicting her. Instead, you must stay focused on your goal. Your goal is absolutely critical. Do not reinforce her current negative wiring pathway. Rebuild the former positive wiring pathway. Couples have unique adversarial cycles. The framework stays the same, but the content of the cycles differs from couple to couple. Remember, all cycles, positive and negative, are determined by the mental picture your wife has of you and the mental picture you have of your wife. Let's take an example of that adversarial cycle. Your wife says you only care about your job, and you end up thinking, you know what, she's always criticizing me, and you feel frustrated, angry, and underappreciated. You end up taking some actions based on these feelings. You spend even more time at work where your efforts are appreciated. Your wife ends up thinking he really doesn't care about me and feels angry and disappointed, and then the cycle starts all over again. Let's take yet another example. You're not interested in what I say. You think nothing I do is right. You end up feeling criticized, frustrated, and discouraged. You take some actions on that you may not be really thinking about. You end up being a little bit more silent, withdrawn, and not wanting more of that criticism. Your wife ends up thinking, I'm not important at all, and feels like she's shut out and isolated. If you spend enough time in your adversarial cycle, you'll end up believing that you and your wife are totally incompatible. Home late again, huh? Says your wife. You end up thinking, you know what? She's always with that criticism. And you feel underappreciated and judged. And then you end up spending less time with your wife because you don't like those feelings. Let's take a closer look at that example. Once your wife has created her thoughts, her mental picture of you, she will interpret all of your behaviors in a way that conforms to that mental picture. You are not seen as her partner who has been unavoidably detained, maybe against your will, at business for some important meeting or by traffic. Accidents happen, but that doesn't fit with her mental picture of you. Instead, you are seen as someone who does not regard spending time with her as valuable. She has slipped your mind, and you forgot all about her. Can you see how her mental picture of you creates your mental picture of her? Your wife might say something like, you're angry, hopeless, you are totally unredeemable. I want you to stay vigilant, keep on your toes, do not fall for this sucker bait. It is a prelude to a vicious downward spiral. How is it sucker bait? Without preemptive coaching, I can tell you with confidence, no red-blooded male will sit there unresponsive to being called things like angry and hopeless. Now, how is it a vicious downward spiral? First, her extremely negative thoughts about you will cause you to develop very negative thoughts about her. An adversarial cycle will begin to develop, and without her recognizing her contribution to the adversarial cycle, you'll begin to confirm her belief that you're simply an angry man. Now, what's the reason for this step? As you're increasing your ability to control the cycles, first you can avoid reinforcing the negative wiring pathway and instead focus on rebuilding the former positive wiring pathway. There is a sad story that I do want to share with you of a dentist who regretted for the rest of his life divorcing his wife and leaving his 2 beloved sons. He divorced believing he was trapped in an incompatible marriage, and the truth was he was trapped by the adversarial cycle. He found out about this too late. He discovered this only after he called me to consult with him about the difficulty he was having with his second marriage. On to step 4. Let's rewire your wife's brain. The brain is very malleable. You will see evidence of this in 3 to 5 weeks. However, to reestablish any wiring in that 3 to 5 week period, you must execute the plan at every opportunity. Now, just to give you a little bit of background, we have seen so many articles and books about the plasticity of the mind. And yes, you can be an adult and still rewire the brain. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Articles about neuroplasticity can be found all over, including here at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology from 2016. What is neuroplasticity? Well, it's a combination of neuro and plasticity. Easy enough, right? It simply describes how the neural pathways within the brain are, quote unquote, plastic. Plastic means they are malleable, flexible enough that they can be easily created, molded, and rewired. Let's take another look at the neural pathway. Those thoughts lead to feelings. Those feelings lead to actions. First, we have the thought that maybe she sees and thinks about you in a different way. Is it the friend or the non-friend? When that will determine what she feels and what she says and does. The increase of either brain pathway is directly related to the quality and quantity of the practicing that created it. Think of a concert violinist. The more episodes of practice, the more the nerve pathway becomes a habit. You now know that the recurrent adversarial cycles are the episodes of practice, which reinforce the unwanted negative mental picture your wife has of you. Now we have some good news. Let's talk about how you can shrink a neural pathway. If a pathway in your wife's brain isn't reinforced with current practice, very important, found in the adversarial cycles, the unused pathway shrinks. MRI evidence of this shrinkage due to lack of practice occurs within 2 to 3 weeks. That's very bad news for concert violinists, but wonderful news for you. However, once the pathway is formed, even if it's dormant and no longer being reinforced, the unused shrunken pathway will remain and can easily become operational again. One example, if someone hadn't ridden a bike in 50 years, will they suddenly be able to ride one? Old pathways can quickly become operational. And this is why so many couples divorce. I want to repeat that for you. Once the pathway is formed, even when it is no longer reinforced and no longer active, the shrunken pathway will remain and can easily, very easily, become operational again. In your wife's brain, that's a glitch waiting to happen. Your wife now has 2 alternative pathways to think about you, to visualize you. One of them is a glitch. One path allows her to suddenly and unexpectedly return to see you as her best friend. The glitch pathway allows her to suddenly and for no apparent reason see you as non-friendly. You have already seen this happen with your wife, I guarantee it. At one moment, she is thoughtful, caring, and considerate. Then, for no apparent reason, she behaves as if you're the enemy. Beware of that glitch. The glitch will cause you to erroneously believe that you've failed to rewire her brain. You haven't. The glitch will emerge for no reason, out of nowhere, and sucker bait you into another adversarial cycle. Don't be baited in. The glitch will definitely and repeatedly and abruptly emerge. It's the most severe, unpredictable, recurrent problem that you're going to face. The glitch will unexpectedly blindside you. Do not allow the glitch to cause your divorce. Stay steady on course and continue to execute the plan. It's only a glitch. I promise you, it will pass. Let's take another look at that glitch using our example. Your wife says, "I'm not important to you." Stop right there. Remember that it's a glitch, and correcting that misperception creates the adversarial cycle. Don't say you're wrong. Let's go with the surprise response instead. When your wife has the best friend picture of you, she will interpret things from that perspective. "That's so sweet of you to bring me flowers." When she slips into the glitch, she will see you as non-friendly. "You're just trying to manipulate me with these flowers." Do not, and I repeat, do not follow your instinctive knee-jerk reaction and discard the flowers out of anger. Stay steady on course. Continue to execute the plan. The next piece of advice may shock you, but I'm going to tell you right now to avoid marriage counseling. Now that you understand the mechanics, you will be able to understand why marriage counseling causes divorce. The success rates of counseling are at 30%. Hard to believe, I know. Why does that happen? It's just unbelievable. You have better odds of flipping a coin. That means that 70% of people who went to marriage counseling report that within a year they're worse off than before they saw the counselor or divorced. Can you imagine spending all that time, energy, and hopeful anticipation in marriage counseling, believing that you were making progress, only to find out that those sessions just made things worse? Unfortunately, unintentionally, and unknowingly, marriage counseling pushes your wife towards divorce. While you're diligently restoring the best friend picture wiring in your wife's brain, marriage counseling does the opposite. It reinforces the pathway that you now know needs to be eliminated. What are your problems? Says the therapist. I know it's well-meaning, but they ask your wife, and then they recall those painful episodes. And you know as well as I that any red-blooded wife can rattle off a dozen things you did, but you wish you hadn't. He criticized me at my uncle's funeral. He embarrassed me last Thanksgiving. He insulted me in front of my brother. He didn't get me a Christmas present, etc., etc., etc. This therapy reinforces your wife's brain pathway of seeing you as non-friendly. This is the exact opposite of what is needed. Let's try to compromise. Again, this is done with the best intention by the therapist, but this is deceptive and counterproductive. The therapist is positioned as a conflict negotiator, encouraging you and your wife to compromise. It's businesslike, but this is absolutely treacherous. When you compromise, you instinctively protect as much of your turf as possible. Any human would. These sessions reinforce each of you seeing the other as the opponent and seeing that tug of war. Don't forget the prime directive. Restore the original positive picture that she had of you. Do nothing to reinforce her current negative picture. Now, to recap, what do you need to win? This system, derived from the most advanced brain research, is your best chance to stop your wife's divorce plan. First off, let's lower your wife's stress levels so she can calmly reconsider her decision. Next up, don't allow a destructive, self-fulfilling prophecy to determine your fate. Third, control the interactional cycle to control the fate of every conversation. Last but not least, at every opportunity, execute the plan to rewire your wife's brain. When you execute the four-step system, you'll wake up next to the person who loves you from the bottom of her heart, and you feel the same way about her. That million-pound weight has been lifted from your mind and your body, and you'll be free of the fog and heaviness that comes from the uncertainty and worry. You'll each look forward to spending time with one another. Each day will bring you closer and closer. You'll have your best friend back again, someone who always has your back. You're going to tap right back into the attraction and passion that first brought you two together. It's going to come rushing back. You'll feel more alive and energized. Something you thought was gone has been brought back to your life. Now you have a choice to make. Choice number one, you take this information and the new perspective it provides, and you put it in a safe place, anticipating you will put it into action at a later time. Until then, you can hope that she will come to her senses and realize that a divorce will permanently damage the lives of the people she loves most. Choice number two, you refuse to sit still. You want to be actively involved in determining your fate and the fate of your family. You want to immediately jump into action to calmly derail your wife's divorce plan. If this is you and you are absolutely determined to jump into action and stop her plan, this is how I can help. I'll work with you for about 40 to 45 minutes in a complimentary strategy session. This is a complimentary one-on-one strategy session. This is where we will begin working on the reasons why she wants a divorce. What is that she said versus what you believe? Then we'll begin to examine that momentum, the urgent forward drive that she's demonstrating for that divorce. We'll look for ways to slow that down. Then we'll uncover hidden challenges possibly sabotaging your marriage. And finally, we'll use that information to develop a strategy to slow and then derail her her divorce plan. If I see that I can help you, I will show you how. If I can't help, I'll be 100% upfront with you. The truth is, there are some situations which I cannot help. At the very least, you will have new perspective on your situation and the steps you can take to change it. No matter which way it goes, this strategy session will have the greatest impact on your marriage that you will ever experience. You might be saying to yourself, Dr. Carlsberg, why are you not charging anything? This is crazy. You've got years of experience. I do this because you know what? I'm upset. I'm beyond upset. I'm seeing the current misguided advice causing people to divorce unnecessarily. It's driving me crazy. This is causing people lifelong pain, and it is absolutely preventable. I wish that when I needed help, someone had been there for me. Instead, I received the same ill-conceived, mistaken advice that propelled my divorce. With this new information, my divorce would have been prevented. I know that you might want ongoing help. However, before we consider that option, during the strategy session, you and I will need to decide if it's a good fit. By that I mean we need to determine if working together will achieve measurable success within 6 to 8 weeks. This strategy session is not for everyone, however. To qualify, you must be determined to step up and take immediate, decisive action. You must be able to precisely follow explicit and detailed coaching, and you have to have self-discipline to execute the highly structured plan. If you think this might be right for you and you're ready to stop that divorce, I invite you to obtain and then submit your application for a strategy session. Send an email requesting an application to drcarlsberg317@gmail.com. Once I receive your application, we'll be able to schedule that one-on-one strategy session. Now, unfortunately, this opportunity for a strategy session is limited due to the one-on-one time needed to provide you with a meaningful result. If you're requesting an application, I suggest you do not discuss the contents of this video with your wife. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you found the information valuable and you're on your way to stopping your divorce. I'm Dr. Carlsberg. Thank you again for watching. Have a great day.